Welcome everyone for the MEMO's conversation series. So today we are going to host Professor Mazin Qumsiyeh from Palestine, Bethlehem. First of all, I would like to mention about his background briefly. Welcome, Professor Mazin from Bethlehem.
Thank you.
Professor Mazin Qumsiyeh, he teaches and does research at Bethlehem and Biodiversity Universities. He previously served on the faculties of the University of Tennessee, Duke, and Yale Universities as well. And he founded the Palestine Institute for Biodiversity Sustainability at Bethlehem University. He published over 1,000 scientific papers on the topics of from cultural heritage to biodiversity to cancer. His many published books include Bats of Egypt, Mammals of Holy Land, Sharing the Land of Canaan, Human Rights and the Israeli-Palestinian Struggle, and my best one, and the popular one, I think, Popular Resistance in Palestine, A History of Hope and Empowerment. So, Professor Qumsiyeh was harassed and arrested for non-violent actions, but also he received a number of prestigious awards for these same actions. He and his beloved wife and dozens of other volunteers they continue to have joyful participation in the sorrows of this world and make a real difference for sustainability of nature and human communities in Palestine. So my first question on behalf of MEMO will be, Professor Qumsiyeh, you have published over 100 scientific papers, including the topic of cultural heritage. So as we are seeing the last incident and attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So Al-Aqsa Mosque, it is one of the cultural heritage protected by UNESCO. In 1982, the site was placed on the UNESCO's endangered list as a result of tensions within the city. International laws such as Rome Statute and Hague Convention are forbidding attacks on the religious and cultural sites like Al-Aqsa Mosque are well established, but though no national government has ever been held to account. So my question is, how does Israeli raid on Al-Aqsa Mosque could constitute a war crime?
Well, Israel, just to put it in context, Israel was established in 1948 as a colonial settler state. There was intent on transforming Palestine from multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious society to make it into the Jewish state of Israel. And in 1967, Israel occupied the remaining 22% of Palestine, which includes Jerusalem, the old city, and so forth. And so Israel is now the de facto government over the area of historic Palestine from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean. As a result of these 7.5 decades of occupation and colonization of Palestine, 7.5 million Palestinians were made refugees or displaced people. That is what we call in the medical field the etiology of the problem, and why we have a problem, why we have issues here. The issues like attacks on mosques and churches and people of faith and preventing them from getting to their holy sites all fit as symptoms of this underlying problem. And of course, you are right that they are considered crimes against humanity and war crimes per international law. But Israel has received impunity for 73 years from international law. From the day it was born, basically violated international law and was impugned and not held accountable for for its crimes from the beginning. So this is just one more crime to add to the very, very, very long list of crimes against humanity and war crimes that Israel is engaged on. Things from ethnic cleansing, like is happening in Sheikh Jarrah or other neighborhoods in Jerusalem, home demolitions, killing of unarmed civilians like happening in Gaza as we speak. Whole families are being wiped out. That's also a war crime. And then one could go on and on, but all of these are part and parcel of the process that was created, which is a process, basically of Zionism to transform our country to be a colonial settler state.
People are reacting, some Jewish people also from the region, they are reacting for the attacks. Last week, Israeli TV personality Asaf Harel said during his show, let me briefly explain what he said. He said, "We have been abusing Palestinians on a daily basis for years and denying them for their basic rights like infrastructure, food, healthcare, education." Dr. Mazin, I remember when we had a conversation in Istanbul 3 years ago together, face to face, about water sources of Palestine. You said to me, Elif, it is like a slow motion genocide. So you mentioned about your water report and injustice about dividing the resources between two countries. So what is the situation now in current days, nowadays, in terms of reaching daily sources like water, electricity?
Yeah, I mean, when I use the term slow motion genocide, it has actually been accelerating. The latest attacks on Gaza are an acceleration when you drop American-made, of course, and funded bombs on civilian areas. One bomb killed 21 members of the same family. Imagine 3 generations, a whole family wiped out with one bomb. These atrocities are a genocide. I think there's no going around it. So I just want to make sure that you understand my position now is even stronger than when I met you 3 years ago. I think Israel fits under the Crimes of Genocide Convention Against Genocide. It fits under the Convention on Apartheid, fits perfectly under that convention, and other international conventions that were instituted after the Second World War to prevent precisely the kinds of violations of basic human rights that were seen very widely in the First World War and the Second World War. Having said that, now to come to your question about what is happening here, what's happening is basically Israel as a new state, as a manifestation of the Zionist project to create a base for world Zionism here and to control the Middle East. The Zionist project is not just about Palestine, it's about controlling the whole Middle East, the whole Western Asia and North Africa, if you want, to control its very rich natural resources. That is what this project of Zionism is about. And of course, what that means is we want to deny the native people these natural resources of water, minerals, oil, gas, everything else will be controlled by these few elite people that are running the show. This is the whole idea. And I don't want to spend too much time about the symptoms of this colonialism because your audience is very familiar with it. Anybody who's hearing this broadcast knows what settler colonialism is about and what it aims to do and how it aims to do it. When you had European colonizers in North America, for example, who took the livelihoods of the native people, even killing 2 million buffaloes, so that they deny the natives their food, basically, so that the natives will die. And then the new European colonizers, British and Spanish, etc., will own the remaining natural resources. This is all expected in colonialism. In South Africa, for example, under apartheid, diamond and the gold mines and so forth were controlled by the apartheid regime in denial of the native people rights, indigenous people rights to these natural resources. In Latin America, we saw it with the Spanish in Portugal, Brazil, Mexico, etc. So the symptoms are clear, and I think what people need to do is think about how we solve these things and focus less on the symptoms, which are all understandable, not excusable, of course, but focus on, instead of on the symptoms and so forth, to focus more on the therapies and the resolutions, and how do we move forward, and how do indigenous people resist, and why do they resist? And I am very proud that we have resistance here. You know, they can call it terrorism, or they can call it anti-Semitism, or they can call it whatever they want to call it. Mm-hmm. But it is natural under systems of colonial occupations for the native people to resist. And resistance, of course, has many forms. I don't want the audience to think of one form of resistance versus others. There are hundreds of forms of resistance, from engaging in boycott, divestment, sanctions, to media work, to lobbies, to demonstrations, peaceful and otherwise, to the armed resistance, which is the end of the bell-shaped curve of resistance. These are things natural in all such situations. So I hope we don't just focus on one symptom and spend all our time talking about one symptom. The killings, for example, the killings of the natives, as horrible as it is, when I say, you know, members of whole families, 3 generations are wiped out, as horrible as this is, it is part and parcel of settler colonialism. It was happening in South Africa under apartheid. It was happening in North America to Native Americans. Ethnic cleansing is a symptom. We had the March of Tears of Native Americans from Florida to Oklahoma, and so on. This is part and parcel of colonialism, and people should, once they make the right diagnosis and they can understand the symptomology that's associated with it.
Yes, you perfectly mentioned about colonialism, and you gave a lot of example beside Palestinian. You gave a lot of example about Spanish, about colonialism, you know, from the world, from the history. It was really, really good flashback for our audience, and also personally, really, I feel really, really enriched. You know, as you mentioned about the resistance, I would like to mention about your one of the popular book. It was called Popular Resistance in Palestine. It is really, really important book, especially for younger generations like us. So the book shows the effectiveness and the bravery of non-violent resistance, and you are one of the leader of non-violent resistance in Palestine, as far as I follow you. As I mentioned before, the book shows the effectiveness and the bravery of non-violent resistance with the principles used by, for example, Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela. So you believe that peace with justice is possible in Israel and Palestine, and in fact may be within reach. So how can you please explain, you know, and with your own words?
Right. I mean, if I give you an example, if somebody comes to your house and says, Elif, or, get out of the house at the point of the gun, or God forbid they shoot your relatives and then force the rest of the family to leave the house. What is the response to that? Of course, the people who are removed from their house are going to resist. It is as natural as breathing and eating and reproducing, if you want. It's a natural human condition to protect their lives and livelihoods. That I want people to understand that it is not a matter of like, I decide to resist because I like to resist. No, you resist because it's natural. If you are pushed out of your land and house, people try to push you out of your land and house, that you resist. Now, how do you resist? Different people resist in different ways. If you corner even a dog in a corner and start poking with a stick, different dogs behave differently. Some dogs will bark, some dogs will whine, some dogs will beg, some dogs will try to bite you, depending on the type of dog that you're dealing with. So the same for human beings also. Their resistance is not going to be uniform and exactly the same because of their background, because of their age, because of their gender, because whatever, education. So different people resist differently. And I don't say there's one form of resistance that's right and one form that's wrong. This is a kind of attitude that's just simply mistaken, because you cannot say, well, the lion is wrong for eating the gazelle. Well, the lion eats a gazelle. That's, as a biologist, I describe it. And so it's as a scientist, I describe what I see. I'm not giving a value judgment on these things. But when I looked at history of popular resistance in Palestine, so as I mentioned, 14 uprisings that had happened over the past 120 years or 130 years of resistance. These uprisings included many forms of resistance. Some people engaged in resistance by objecting, by petitioning, whatever. There are different forms, and they engage in these different forms. Same as happened in South Africa or Latin America under colonization. Now, it's important to realize that resistance is going to happen regardless of the outcome of colonialism. And colonialism has three possible outcomes. One outcome is like what happened in Algeria, where 1 million French packed their bags and went to France. I don't say back to France because some of them were 6, 7 generations. In Algeria, some of them have never seen France in their lives, and they had to go. And this was very costly for the local people. 2 million Algerians were lost. Some say 3 million were killed in the struggle for independence. That's one possible scenario. Second scenario is genocide of the natives, as happened in the United States and in Australia and a couple of other places. And the third scenario, which is the most common scenario 1 and 2 are rare. The third scenario, very common, every country on earth actually has that, which is the descendants of the colonized and the descendants of the colonizers who choose to stay, live in one country for those people. This happened in places like Latin America, like South America, all the countries in South America, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, etc. Also Central America, like Panama, etc. North America, like Mexico and Canada, Southeast Asia, like Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Taiwan, all these countries, and in Africa, like in South Africa and Zimbabwe and so forth, where this is the third scenario that is found in 140, 150 countries. I would say it's also found in Europe. I mean, people don't think about it, but Switzerland, for example, had colonization by the Romans. That's why South Switzerland speaks Italian. And the descendants live in one country of the colonizers and the colonized. Britain also was colonized by the Romans. Spain was colonized by the Moors and from North Africa. And after that, immediately became the largest and most destructive colonizing power on earth, colonized and destroyed so many countries. So these are the outcomes. And as a scientist, I say the most likely outcome is that third scenario. And what would accelerate arriving at it is more resistance. More resistance, as I mentioned, in the various forms that the people engage in, depending on their background.
Okay, thank you so much, really. I highly appreciate it to have conversation with you today after these deadly attacks, especially. What I like, you know, in your speech today, especially, I would like to share, honestly, to be honest, you are giving examples from the life because you are the eyewitness of this situation and this impunity, unfortunately, in the region. So that's why you can give very unique examples as an eyewitness and as a defender of human rights in Palestine. So I highly appreciated to host you today as a guest on behalf of MEMO. I know you have another meeting for the next hour, so thank you very much for your time. I highly appreciate it, really. Inshallah, see you next time for other discussion, other conversation.
Thank you. Today, and I hope your audience get mobilized to do something, because this is a human problem, not a Palestinian problem, and we're all responsible for it.
Yes, thank you very much for sharing your ideas. Today, we hosted from London as a live stream, as a part of MEMO conversation, Professor Mazin Qumsiyeh from Bethlehem. He's one of the human rights defender, very powerful, strong human rights defender in Palestine, and the founder of one institute, Biodiversity Institute. He's very prominent, very, very prominent, one of the prominent scientists from the region. Thank you very much for your time. So see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.